Um, Yeah, as I'm giving talks on the loving search for the lost servant, or as we're engaging in this kata, sometimes I feel a little remiss in that uh, it's always some auspicious day. It might be Ekadashi, it might be Jagannath Ratha Yatra, it could be Janmashtami. There may be so many different occasions and events, but I continue to plod on reading the same text because my service is to this particular book. So you all forgive me if I'm not giving cátedra, as we say in Spanish, if I'm not uh, lecturing on the disappearance day of Jiva Goswami, for example, or uh, Jagannath Ratha Yatra. I'm simply following text here, loving search for the lost servant. Just a moment. I have to do some housekeeping with my speaker. I might have lost my sound. It doesn't matter. So let's dive into the reading. Uh, so Srila Sridhar Maharaj, he was discussing faith and the nature of faith. And Srila Rupa Goswami tells us that uh, there's a progression. Um, you could call it a process, but I like to think of it as a progression from uh, a general faith, maybe in God or some higher power, that becomes directed towards Sri Krishna Bhagavan. And that leads us towards sadhu sangha, just like now we're engaging in a kind of sadhu sangha by having this kata. And then that leads you to bhajana kriya. Well, if you look at Srila Prabhupada Bhaktivedanta's commentary in Chaitanya Charitamrita, he points out that bhajana kriya really starts with initiation to or initiation with a spiritual master or guru. So Srila Sridhar Maharaj, following this progression, first he talks about faith and then discusses um, the sadhu a little bit, the saints. And from there, he moves towards the idea of accepting initiation and becoming a disciple. So he says here, what then will be the real symptom of a disciple? Who is the real seeker of the truth? What is the qualification of one who is searching after the truth? What is his attitude, his nature? And what will be the symptom of the guru, the guide? So these are all big questions that we can contemplate on a daily basis. Am I a real disciple? Am I a real seeker of truth? What is my qualification? How should I frame my search for truth? Uh, and what would be my attitude, my nature? And of course, uh, the Buddhists are very popular because they have the Eightfold Path. And you could see that their Eightfold Path is probably derived from uh, Ashtanga Yoga of Patanjali. But bhajan or practical sadhana worship seems to follow that sort of observation that was made by Patanjali and Ashtanga Yoga and by the Buddha, this Eightfold Path. That includes um, things like right action uh, or karma, drishti, or seeing things properly. So a lot of Srila Sri Ramarsh's discourse is taken up with framing the proper attitude, the proper nature, the qualification for the search. And sometimes we focus our attention exclusively on the guru, thinking that we want to examine his qualification. But this is a difficult thing to do because at some point you must realize that a spiritual master, the guru, is on a higher platform than you are. Your teacher is more advanced in the material than you are. And to really get to the core of your teacher's qualification, your teacher's adhikar, that's difficult because you don't have the qualification or the adhikar in the first place to examine someone who is on a higher level. So these are all problematic questions. And these are the sorts of questions that Srila Sridhar Maharaj likes to talk about in his talks. So what is the nature of drishti? What is the qualification of one who is searching after the truth? So he comes to this shloka from the Bhagavad Gita, Tadvadi pranipatena pariprashnanas sevaya upadekshanti te jnanam jnaninas tattvadarshina. So you have this word darshan and drishti darshan. They come from the same Sanskrit root, which means to see. Jnaninas tattvadarshina, those who know can see the truth. One can learn the truth only by submissively approaching and inquiring from those who have seen and experienced the truth. And by rendering service to them, one becomes initiated into transcendental knowledge. So he's saying Krishna is talking to Arjuna, and Arjuna is trying to understand, well, what is real knowledge here? What am I supposed to do? And Krishna says, well, that vidhi, that sort of rule, knowledge, pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya. You can get that through surrender, sincere inquiry, and service. So these are the threefold aspects of the disciple or student. The student has to submit to the master. Without that submission, there will be no transmission. Pariprashna. This means asking appropriate questions. And sevaya, service. So by these threefold things, upadekshanti te jnanam, the jnaninas, they will give you upadesh. Those who are in knowledge will teach you. And they know because they can see. So Srila Sridhar Maharaj breaks down this verse. He says, what is required? Pranipat, submission, and seva, service. Then the inquiry will be bona fide. Otherwise, it is a false transaction. It may have no value. So this is an important point in that so many may come to a particular guru with the idea of getting something and then being able to monetize that, market it, or exploit it in some way or another. So many, in the mundane world, so many university courses are offered, and it will be advertised. Take this course and you will be a success. And so people study with the idea of becoming more successful in their field and, of course, making money, advancing. So if this is your idea when you approach the spiritual master or guru, you will be sorely disappointed. You may be able to come away with some interesting knowledge, but this is not transcendental. This is not what the guru is offering you. I recently saw a post by someone on the internet. They were discussing Govinda Maharaj, His Divine Grace Bhakti Sudhir Govinda Dev Goswami Maharaj. the successor Acharya to Srila Sri Maharaj. And he was reflecting on the idea of mundane knowledge and scholarship. And people who study Sanskrit in particular. And he said, long, long ago, I studied Sanskrit along with Hari Charan Prabhu, Hari Charan Das Brahmachari, who was a faithful servant of Srila Sridhar Maharaj. I don't know if he took sannyas. Perhaps someone out there knows. But a great soul and a friend of Srila Govinda Maharaj. He said, well, the two of us studied Sanskrit together and made some progress. But later, Hari Charan said, I think it would be good for me to go to the university and study Sanskrit in a more formal way. And then after I get my degree, I can come back here to the Mat. And he told this to Srila Sridhar Maharaj. And Srila Sridhar Maharaj, he was nonplussed. He said, what? Why would you do that? And Hari Charan Prabhu, a little bit chagrined, he explained to him, well, this way I could be of better service to the Mat if I was more erudite in the Sanskrit language. And Srila Sridhar Maharaj was somewhere between shocked and amused, and sort of laughed and said, well, look, what you're getting here is more than what you could get there. Think about it. You're getting what Vyasadeva gave. Vyasadeva initiated Sanskrit. Without Vyasadeva, there is no Sanskrit. There's no Mahabharata, there's no Vedas, there's no Bhagavad Purana. Madhvacharya. You're getting Madhvacharya. You're getting Vyasadeva. You're getting Rupa Goswami. You're getting Shukadev Goswami here. Not only that, but you have the association of Vaishnavas who are all dedicated to entering into the deep meaning of the Shastra, the deep meaning of the Puranas, the deep meaning of the Vedanta Sutra. What would you possibly get by going to some university course? In effect, he was saying, are you out of your mind? And recently, this came to mind because I have a friend who recently decided that it would be good for him to study Sanskrit. And I said, well, good luck to you. This is a devotee friend of mine. I said, well, good luck to you. Let me know how that goes. Because oftentimes we Western devotees, we feel at a loss. We feel that we don't really come up to the mark in terms of understanding the science of Krishna consciousness from the point of view of a deep reading of Sanskrit. And so why not study Sanskrit? And I told my friend, well, let me know how that goes. And a few weeks later, he reported back, oh, I've got a great teacher. She wrote a book. Oh, that's nice. And she teaches at a school. Very good, very good. Well, let me know how, are you reading, what are you reading? Are you reading the Bhagavad Gita? Oh, no, we're just doing the alphabet. Okay. And another 3 months went by, and I asked him, how are you doing now? He said, yeah, we're reading the Hitopadesh by Narayan. The Hitopadesh is a beautiful collection of animal stories and fables that were told to the the princes of a king. The king couldn't do anything with his sons, and he found this teacher, I believe it was Vishnu Sharma or Narayan. There's different versions of Hitopadesh. Uh, and he asked this pundit, "Can you teach my sons?" And he said, "Yeah, sure." And so he taught them by way of animal stories. And these later became, of course, the fables of Montaigne that we know as Aesop's fables and so on. Beautiful stories, just very useful for teaching young people and children moral philosophy, making friends, losing friends, and so on. Very basic Sanskrit. So I told my friend, well, that's very nice that you're studying the Hitopadesh. Let me know how it goes. And about 3 months later, he came back and told me they were beginning to read the Bhagavad Gita. And I said, well, that's interesting, because we disciples of Bhaktivedanta Swami, we've been reading Bhagavad Gita since the 1960s. I remember I had memorized the first 9, 10 chapters of the Bhagavad Gita in 1976. So as we talked, what became clear to me was that if you study Sanskrit in a university, they will teach you according to their dictionary, their lexicon, and every school of Sanskrit will have a different kind of dictionary. For example, in English, there's the Moni and Williams dictionary that was developed by British Sanskritists about 150 years ago, 1886 or so. Monier Williams. So when you look at a word, for example, dharma, karma, upadesh, tattva, darshan, any of these, you'll find a particular meaning that's given out by British imperialists from the 19th century. And that's what they gleaned through the lens of Shankaracharya and maybe different lines of Buddhist teachers. So to get the meaning of the Bhagavad Gita, you have to go to an old Scottish Presbyterian British imperialist and what his opinion of Shankaracharya's version of karma is. And the whole dictionary will be like that. Or you can go to a Buddhist lexicon and go through the dictionaries given by the Buddhists, where Dharma will be right action according to a Buddhist perspective that everything is nothing. So when a Vaishnava guru like Srila Sridhar Maharaj or Govinda Maharaj tells you that these Sanskrit interpretations may lend themselves to a particular kind of contamination. They're not speaking lightly. What they're telling you is that the meaning of the Puranas, the meaning of the Bhagavad, the real vision of Godhead as given by Vyas and Shukadev and Rupa Goswami, this is not something to be taken lightly. This is a very deep kind of drishti. When it says Ganinas Tattvadarshina, even that might be a little superficial. You could say, Bhaktinas Tattvadarshina, the real Tattvadarshan is given by the Bhaktas. So Lord Shiva says, Aham Vedmi Shuko Veti Vyasa Veti Na Veti Va. Lord Shiva says, I have an idea about this. I think I might know this. Yeah. I know this. Aham Vedmi. Shuko Veti. Shukadev. He knows. Vyas, he may or may not. Maybe he's just transmitting. But the higher truths are certainly known to those who have a deep and abiding study of these ancient truths. So that what Govinda Maharaj was pointing out when he told the story about Hari Charan was that academic knowledge, by its very nature, will be superficial. So, Srila Sri Rama says, what is required? Pranipat, submission, seva, service. Then the inquiry will be bona fide. Otherwise, it is a false transaction. It may have no value. So, you may learn something about the ritual of the thing or the history of the thing or what it's called, its name, but you won't understand the thing itself. We live in a world of names. I saw an interesting talk given by Richard Feynman. He's a famous physicist who taught for many years at Harvard. And he said, if you can't explain something to a 5-year-old boy, then you don't understand it. If you can't break something down and explain it simply, you really don't get it. And that's one of his famous principles. But another one I saw that he was talking about how we live in the world of names. And he said when he was walking through the park one day, a man pointed out a bird, and he said, that's a yellow-flecked blue jay. And he thought to himself, all right, but what have you just told me? You know the name of that bird. You gave that a name. But the name of the thing and the thing itself are very, very different in the material world. So that you can name the different varnas and the different ashrams, that you can name all the kings that came after King Ugrasen. That's very nice, but is that knowledge? I live in Mexico. A lot of Americans come here and they want to fit into the culture. So they learn everything they can about Mexican history and Pancho Villa and the revolution and so on. But they don't really get what it is to live here or who the people are. What is their internal sense? So all these things, the internal message of Krishna, the internal meaning of Krishna consciousness, this is something that Srila Sri Ramakrishna was expert in transmitting. And that if you're fortunate as a disciple, you may connect with, but without the elements of pranipat, pariprashna, and sevaya, without sincere inquiry, submission, and service, you will not progress. It will have no value. So Srila Srinivas continues. He says, it will all be a waste of energy. And that makes me feel strange about giving these kinds of talks, because sometimes I feel like I'm explaining and explaining. And they say good writers, they don't tell, they show. So Srila Sri Ramakrishna, by his own personal effulgence, he would demonstrate Krishna consciousness. But I'm trying to honor his memory by justifying his words, giving a kind of a rational justification to his words. He says, genuine faith does not allow us to think ourselves at liberty to do anything and everything. If it is a real transaction, there must be some guidance from above. Yeah, so the problem with scholarship and Sanskrit study is that we're trying to get at it from below. We're trying to push through using our rational mind, our intellectualism. Whereas Bhaktivinoda, for example, points out again and again, this is Amnaya Tattva, it's revealed truth. So how do you get revealed truth to come to you? Christ says, knock on the door, knock and it shall be answered. Seek and ye shall find. So genuine faith does not allow us to think ourselves at liberty to do anything and everything. If it is a real transaction, there must be some guidance from above. So, Shraddha, faith, is the most important thing for a devotee. When one develops faith, he will do anything to approach the higher subjective realm. Just like right now, Suvasini Meenakshi Sundaram is speeding her way to Dublin, Ireland, to participate in the Ratayatra celebration. She's doing anything and everything to try to please Lord Jagannath. If it is a real transaction, there must be some guidance from above. When one develops faith, he will do anything to approach the higher subjective realm. One who has faith wants to connect with that higher substance, which is composed of eternity, knowledge, and bliss. And again, this is another interesting thing that today our association is largely virtual. It's difficult to be in contact with other devotees. So we take part in virtual association on the internet. But sometimes we see so many attempts to kind of create transcendental reality through visuals, artificial intelligence showing us cartoons of Krishna and Vrindavan and so on, I suppose to stimulate our remembrance of Krishna or Smarna. But these things tend to be a little bit artificial in the sense that you cannot see God with your fleshy eye. Srila Sri Ramakrishna will point out that God has a form, but it's not a mundane form like the form that we know. Your Swarup, the eternal form of the soul, it's made out of eternity, knowledge, and bliss, Satchit Ananda. It's not made of meat. Our bodies are made out of meat, flesh and bone, blood. So when you see with your eye, what are you seeing? You're seeing reality through the filter of meat and flesh and bone, or the vegetable eye, which is made of aqua, vitrea or something like that. I can't remember the Latin, but gelatin. You're observing the world through gelatin. But God is not made out of gelatin. He's not made out of meat. Plants also have perception, don't they? There was an interesting book written by Jagadish, a book called The Secret Life of Plants. Interesting book if you get a chance. Stevie Wonder, the musician, made a record album back in the 70s called Secret Life of Plants. The devotees are chanting Hare Krishna on it. Based on that book, which explains plants also have sensual perception, sentience. They react. They're heliotropic. A plant will move towards the sun. It knows where the sun is. A plant will react when it's cut. Jagadish Chandra Bose, who was the author of uh, Bengal Chemical, where Bhaktivedanta Swami learned pharmaceuticals. Jagadish Chandra Bose was a scientist. Uh, he discovered that plants react when they're cut. It's an interesting book, Secret Life of Plants. What's my point? The point is that plants also have perception, but plant perception is different from the perception of the gelatin eye. When a plant sees the sun, what what does it see? How does it see? How does it perceive? There's the sun. I should move in that direction. It's doing so with a different set of instruments, tools, and perception, but there is perception there. So if there's perception in the plant world, the insect world, a bee sees with thousands and thousands of eyes, there's perception in the human world, but what we're perceiving and how we perceive, it's not the same as divinity. It's not the same as how the soul will perceive soul in the soul world. So faith is a subtle atmic way of connecting with that higher substance of eternity, knowledge, and bliss. Srila Sri Ramar says, faith moves in consideration of existence, knowledge, and love. So faith is kind of like the third eye. Back in the day when I was a kid, there was a book by a Buddhist preceptor named T. Lobsang Rampa called The Third Eye. And it discussed how when he was at an ashram high in the mountains of Tibet, the lamas decided that he was a worthy candidate for the third eye. And they gave him some potent herbs and laid him out on a stone slab, and using an obsidian knife, they made an incision in his forehead and physically opened the third eye. And everyone was fascinated with this book, The Third Eye, until they, of course, they learned that T. Lobsang Rampa was an Englishman who lived in Manchester and had never been to Tibet and had invented the entire story. But still, people were fascinated with this idea of the third eye. So if the third eye exists, it's something like faith. Faith allows us to see the higher world. Faith asks us to approach the higher world, not the lower, and to think. In every way, Krishna is superior. He is our guardian and well-wisher as the basis of faith. Srila Sri Ramarsh continues. He says, the rationalists are always searching with their scientific brains for different ways to utilize and command the things they have discovered in their research. See, that's what contaminates rational thought. Rational thought is always concerned with technology. An ancient name for the human species was Homo faber, or faber, because in Spanish you have fabricar, it means to make things. Homo faber, it means man as tool maker. And then above the Neanderthal, later came a different species of human beings called Homo sapiens, which means man who knows, saber, Homo sapiens, the rationalist. So for hundreds of years, the idea of rationalism and using our great brain to exploit absolutely everything, to utilize and command what we've discovered in our research, This has governed the world. Now we have artificial intelligence, which will do that for us. You don't have to do that anymore. But above and beyond Aristotle's idea that man is a rational animal, there's a higher concept called faith. Now, Srila Sri Rama says faith is concerned with a substance far higher in all respects than even the searcher himself. One who is an inquirer about a higher substance must inquire with what is generally known as faith. So reason can be a tool. Reason is a particular frame of mind that's very helpful. I like to fix things. My computer broke a few weeks ago. So with the help of reason, I got it working again. Reason is great. But how does reason work? There's different aspects of reason. It's called epistemology. But one of the best ones is neti neti, not this, not that. So you have a problem, the computer doesn't work. What's the problem? Maybe it's the power. Turn it off and turn it on. Then you see, well, okay, it's not the power. It must be something else. Maybe it's the software. No, it's not like this. Through the process of elimination, we come to understand what is what is by understanding what is not. But this is an extremely limited form of getting at reality or understanding the truth. Faith gets to a higher reality. It's a different way of seeing, a different way of understanding. So Srila Sri Rama tells us one who is an inquirer about a higher substance must inquire with what is generally known as faith. Proper guidance in faith is also necessary. So it's good to have faith, but we want some guidance. So again, he's making the link between Ado Shraddha Tata Sadhu Sangha to Bhajana Kriya, initiation by a bona fide spiritual master. Proper guidance in faith is also necessary, and that guidance is given by the higher plane. So that's what Christ means when he says, seek and ye shall find, knock and the door shall be open. It has to begin with you having some faith. There's a door. If I knock there, perhaps they'll open. If I seek there, perhaps I'll find. And then the guidance comes from the higher plane. That must be the attitude of our inquiry or search if we are to be successful. So, Bhagavad Gita advises pranipat, pariprashna, sevaya. Surrender, inquire, and serve. In the Upanishads, it is said, tad viganartam saguram evabhigachet samitpani shrotriyam brahmanishtam. To understand the absolute truth. Bhagavad Gita is also called Gita-upanishad because it's Upanishadic. The idea of Upanishad means literally to sit at the feet of the master. So when you sit at the feet of the master tries to explain things to you clearly, sometimes by giving you the rules, sometimes by telling a story, sometimes by giving an example. But the guru himself is fixed in spiritual knowledge. To understand the absolute truth, one must approach a guru who is fixed in spiritual knowledge and well-versed in the scriptures. Now, this is another good point. Anyone can represent themselves as a holy man and say, well, I have seen the truth. But we're also interested in connecting with someone who has a deep appreciation for the great souls, the great spiritual masters the lighthouse saints that have gone before, because this is not invented knowledge. This is perennial wisdom that's coming down. So he should be Samit Pani Shrotriam Brahmanishtam, fixed in spiritual knowledge, Brahmanishta, and well-versed in the scriptures, Shrotriam. And he must approach the guru being prepared for sacrifice. This is a general instruction of the Upanishad. Srimad Bhagavatam similarly advises. So you can see there's a progression here. Sridhar Maharaj has moved from faith to sadhu sangha, to connecting with the spiritual master, the guru. Bhagavatam also advises, Tasmad Gurum Prapadyeta Jigyasu Shreya Uttamam Shabde Parecha Nishnatam Brahmani Upashamashrayam. One seriously inquisitive to search for his highest prospect should take complete shelter of a guru who has deep realizations of the Supreme Lord and the inner meaning of the scriptures. Such spiritual masters have left aside all relative considerations in favor of the supreme absolute consideration. That's Srila Sridhar Maharaj's translation. Brahmani Upashimashraya means this is a special teacher. He's not teaching you how to make pottery or poetry. He's not teaching you carpentry. Those have their own particular considerations, but those are relative considerations. The real spiritual master, he's left all these relative considerations aside. He's interested in faith. He's become an expert in faith because he is faithful. Srila Sridhar Maharaj says we should be very attentive to these things. We should try to understand through self-searching whether we are really approaching divinity through faith. We must also see to it that our faith is real. Proper faith and credulity are not the same. These are all very interesting questions. What's the distinction between credulity and faith? Well, credulity is something like you see a magician perform a magic trick, and because he's very good at seducing you into his vision of reality and cajoling you to follow his misdirection, you believe in the illusion that he's presented. That's credulity. It seems that when the coin disappears from his hand, that he's done something like transform reality. But this is credulity. Further inquiry will show that it's merely an illusion. He has a trick. He hid the coin in another part of his hand, or he moved it into the other hand. That's not the same as faith. Whether one is a bona fide searcher with real faith, Srila Sridhar Maharaj points out, or one whose faith is adulterated, must be considered. So this means that it's not objectionable to question one's faith. It's not objectionable to have a crisis of conscience or a crisis of faith or to have doubt, because we're fallible in the end, and perhaps our perception of reality is fallible. Perhaps our faith is adulterated. So there's nothing wrong with examining that, but we try to examine our faith by coming in contact with those who have a more profound realization. And by doing so, we can see, well, what is the nature of my faith? If you're a carpenter and you're not really sure, am I doing this properly? You can look at what another carpenter is doing and see, aha, he measures twice and only cuts once. If you're a musician, uh, you have a pain in your hand. You go to another violinist and say, well, why does my hand hurt? And the other violinist will say, well, you have to adopt a better posture. So we have to consult higher authorities to guide us because faith is the most important thing. And Srila Sridhar Maharaj, he didn't come out and say, I am the absolute master. I am the finished professor. I cannot learn from anyone. No, he was always probing and interested in going farther and going deeper. And he would even ask his disciples questions to see, well, what do you think? One of the reasons he loved Govinda Maharaj so much was he was not only a disciple, but also a friend who he could consult, even in matters of faith. If we are searching for truth, we're dissatisfied with our present acquisition. We're taking a risk to jump into a higher prospect. We must therefore take guidance carefully. So there's this dichotomy, Hegelian dynamic, dialectic between diving into the infinite and taking guidance carefully. We must be attentive as far as possible. So he's saying there is room, there's a certain amount of room for reason in our search for Sri Krishna, in that we can take a reasonable approach to faith. In the Catholic Christian tradition, this was the mission of Thomas Aquinas. He wrote a 2,000-page treatise in Latin called the Summa Theologica, where he is taking up all these different questions of faith. Like people would go to Srila Sridhar Maharaj and say, well, what is the origin of the soul? And he would give a reasoned explanation. Bhaktivinoda Thakur in Krishna Samhita and also in Chaitanya Shikshamrita, he gives a reasoned explanation for so many things. We are told that our present reason is not sufficient to help us, that more than reason, Shraddha, is needed. And Shraddha also has its symptoms. Still, as far as possible, we shall apply our reason. So I would remind the listener that many of these talks were directed towards devotees who had seen corruption in a different mission and found it difficult to reconcile absolute surrender to a mission whose purpose seemed to have deviated from the original precept. And so he's explaining, yes, it's all right to be able to apply your reason sometimes when you can see something is off, something is not right. He says, when I first came to the mission, I thought, the transcendental truths that I hear from these devotees do not come within the clutches of worldly intelligence, but still, when I want to throw myself into that association, I shall use my reason and intellect as far as possible, understanding that I'm going to jump into something which will be beyond my control, beyond my calculation. So we must carefully understand what Shraddha is with guidance from saints, scriptures, and gurus. So in my own life, for example, even recently, I was invited to Russia by Avadut Maharaj to attend his Veda Life festival in Petersburg, Moscow, and later in Kiev. And I was so happy because I could see here's the Russian devotees, the Ukraine devotees, devotees from England, Africa, um, Colombia, Mexico, all around the world. And everyone is with great joy participating in Krishna consciousness, kirtan, sankirtan. We boarded a boat on the Neva River and held kirtan all through the canals of St. Petersburg, where Dostoevsky composed uh, his works. And Srila Prabhupada once walked in Moscow. We walked on the same path, the Red Square, and did Harinam Kirtan. And it was a sublime experience. But uh, when went, I went on a one-way ticket and later found myself in uh, Kiev, Ukraine, uh, with only 14 days on my visa and no way to get back to Mexico. And at that time, they just bombed, some terrorists had bombed the airport in Istanbul. And there I was in Ukraine without a return ticket. But I had faith in the devotees. I had faith that uh, I could trust them with my life. And I did. I still do. So Srila Sri Rama's, he's saying he knew that if he came into that association, he would end up trusting the devotees with his life. But he thought, well, I can try to use my reason and intellect as far as possible, understanding that I'm going to jump into something which will be beyond my control, beyond my calculation. So I love Srila Sridhar Maharaj because he's, for me, a thinking man's guru. And I think I've run out of time here. And I'm reading from my screen. I can't see anybody's reaction, but uh, as I said before, I think maybe these talks have a certain archival value in that maybe they will be preserved for all eternity on the internet. And in 15 years, someone will look at this and think, oh, Krishna consciousness, what is that? Let me see. But I have no way of knowing. It's like putting a message in a bottle and throwing it out there. But I'm again stunned and amazed that anyone would listen to my humble rant on this great book, uh, Loving Search for the Lost Servant and its teaching. I declared a holiday last week because I thought, well, everybody's at the Ratha Yatra in Puri. And if they're not at the Ratha Yatra in Puri, they're watching Argentina and Spain beat each other up in the World Cup. So who's going to want to listen to me? But then I forgot, Ratha Yatra is eternal. It's always going on somewhere. So I should probably take the approach that loving search for the lost servant is eternal and it's always going on somewhere. So why should I stop these talks? So I thank all of you for your kindness and lending an ear and taking it an hour out of your Sunday to listen and give us your Sangha. That's the only reason I'm doing this. I know that Tapanandini is out there, Advai Krishna's at the top of the world, Hari Priya's in Ireland, in Wexford, I think, right? Sivasini Meenakshi Sundaram, she's driving as fast as she can to get to the big celebration in
No, we
Dublin.
just came back. I just came back.
Oh, you're returning.
Yeah, I was returning. Yeah.
Oh, you're in your home now.
Yeah, I just arrived just now, 5 minutes ago. Yeah.
Wow. We seek him here, we seek him there, we seek him everywhere. Is she in heaven? Is she in hell? You know. Suvasini Meenakshi Sundaram. I'm very impressed. We just saw you in your car, and now here you are in your home. I don't know how you did that. But anyways, somewhere in the world, someone is chanting Hare Krishna and maybe thinking about Srila Sridhar Maharaj. Advai Krishna is very quiet. Can you say hello? Say hello.
I'm in Italy, actually. I'm in Italy.
Well, there you are. See, 1 minute you're in Cooley, Ireland, at the top of the world, and then what part of Italy are you in?
I am at my mother's.
Oh, okay.
The place where you have been. Yeah.
Deep in the heart of Milano.
Yes, yes.
I have to tell you, visiting Il Duomo there was one of the most transcendental experiences I've ever had, because sometimes if your body just can't do it, it's your ego maybe goes down a little bit. So I was not exactly jet lagged, but something like that. And then we climbed to the towers and spires and statues high above Milan. And walking through the clouds, we saw the ancient saints permeating the sky. And it was an experience of vertigo. I don't know, but you were my guide, just like Virgil was guiding Dante through the purgatory into.
Yes, but at the same way, you can go further. Like I am like Virgilio, who couldn't go any further.
Yeah, that's right. Because at one point, Virgil, he's the king of Latin. He's the king of poetry. He's the king of the rational, reasonable world. But when he gets to heaven, that's it for him. He can't go any further. There's no faith there. It's all reason. So Srila Sridhar Maharaj is telling us, huh?
That's me. I can't go any further.
There's some sort of a balance that we have to strike between faith and reason. But in the end, you have to leave reason behind. You have to risk yourself. No risk, no gain. All risk, no gain. But all these things. The other thing is, when I'm doing this, I just think, well, I'm preaching to the choir. Everybody already knows these things, but they tolerate me. Just like in the temple, there used to be in the back of the temple, the only people who would come to the lecture would be these ladies who were making flower garlands, and they're not even really listening. They're just there because, it's happy to hang out with their friends and make flower garlands. But you think when you're giving the talk, oh, I'm saying something really deep now. Srila Sridhar Maharaj had a line about that. You've heard it, right? There was this Muslim mullah who could really explain the Quran and the teachings. And sometimes the only person who would come would be this old lady. And as he was speaking deeply about the teachings of Muhammad, the old lady would sit in the back and cry. And he thought, wow, I'm really hitting it. I'm in the groove. I got the flow going. I'm giving something delicious and sweet. One day he approached this woman. He asked her, so, I noticed that sometimes during my sermon, during my talk, you cry. Are they tears of joy? What is it that moves you so that you weep? And the woman said, oh, well, you see, I used to have this goat, and he had a little beard like that. And sometimes when you talk, you move your beard just like my little goatee goat. I love that goat so much, it makes me cry. So of course he said, well, we should not be listeners like that, but sometimes I think, who knows? And then years later, you see somebody took it seriously. So you never know. Anyways, I thank you all so much. If there's anyone out there listening who thinks that this is a worthy Sangha, support us with your tears. Support us with your prayers. Send a worshipable benediction to Sivasani Meenakshi Sundar, to Adwai Krishna over there in Milano, the design capital of the world. Send some blessings to Tapanandini in Merida, Yucatan, the heart of the pyramids and the Mayan culture. Every little town where she lives, there's 1,000 tiny little Mayan towns, and everyone has a Mayan pyramid, and they're all connected by an ancient system of roads, which lets you know that that whole area was, Aztec, Maya, mystical inframundo thousands of years ago. Who knows? But send some benediction her way and send some benediction my way. I need it. All right. So pray for my soul, boys and girls. And Gaura Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. That's it for
Jai
today.
Mahayogi Prabhu ki
Hare Krishna.
Jai. Thank you so much,
Jai.
Mahayogi Prabhu. Thank you so
Thank you,
much.
Mahayogi. Dandavats to all.
Thank
Hari bol,
thank
Hari
you
bol.
all.
Dandavad.
We'll try to do it again next week, and we'll see you all again for another reading of The Loving Search for the Lost Servant. Be there or be square. Haribo. Adios.
Adios. Bye bye to everyone.